These are notes, Advanced Math 2.4 notes. Solving equations continued. Solving equations. Solve for x. Number 1. And we are solving, it does say it on the worksheets, it'll always be over the real numbers, meaning no imaginary solutions. 2 over x, the quantity of x plus 1 squared, minus 9 over x plus 1, minus 5 equals 0. Okay, we've seen a few of these by now. I did some in notes on lesson 2.2. We had some in class where we did some together. Recognizing, and I'm hoping you can recognize it already, that this is a substitution problem. First off, the restriction is x cannot equal -1. And then we let w equal x plus 1. And I'm hoping everyone can look at it now and recognize it. So when test day comes, you're ready to say 2 over w squared minus 9 over w minus 5 over 1 equals 0. All right, so then we clear by multiplying everything by the w squared. And the w squared on the first set reduces, leaving you with 2. Take away one set reduces, leaving you with 9w minus 5w squared equals 0. We can factor backwards. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, I've said it before, if there's an equal sign, I'd rather either divide everything by a -1 or move it over to the other side, giving me positive 5w squared plus 9w minus 2 equals 0. And then I get ready to factor so that I can use the zero product property to solve. I'm going to go with 2 out here and 1 here to give me 10 and 1. Looks like this will be positive and this will be negative. Positive 10, negative 1, giving me the positive 9. All right, now we go and we plug back in. Five blank minus 1, exaggerated parentheses, blank plus 2, exaggerated parentheses, equals 0. And we plug the w back in, which is x plus 1. And we clean up. All right, I'm going to move it over here. This gives me 5x plus 5 minus 1, and x plus 1 plus 2, I drop the inner parentheses. This gives me 5x plus 4 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. Go ahead and solve, subtract, divide, subtract the 3. You end up with negative 4/5 and negative 3. And the only restriction was x could not equal -1, so both of these answers are good. And we're done with this problem. Definite on the test, and I'm hoping we've done enough by now where you can recognize when it's going to be this substitution type problem. All right, number 2. X to the 1/4 minus 12x to the negative 1/4 minus 1 equals 0. Don't forget about your restrictions. I know we haven't been really needing them these last few problems since these last few days, but there will be one in the test where if you don't check it to your restrictions, you end up with the wrong answer. All right. It'll help to find the restriction if I first change this to a fraction. So x to the 1/4 over 1 minus 12 over x to the 1/4 minus 1 over 1 equals 0. Okay, so our only restriction is 0. X cannot equal 0. And it cannot equal 0 because 0 to the 1/4 is the 4th root of 0, which is 0. Okay, we clear by multiplying everything by the common denominator. And the common denominator is x to the 1/4. So we multiply everything by the same thing. Here nothing reduces, and since nothing reduces and you're multiplying like bases, you add the exponents. X to the 2/4, I will reduce that later. Minus, that's gone. This is 12 minus x to the 1/4 equals 0. Okay, so 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. And these are like the ones we did yesterday. When you're looking here, we're going to put it in factored form. Which one's bigger, 1/2 or 1/4? 1/2, because if you take half of a half, you get a fourth. That's another way to check it. So x to the 1/2 comes first, minus x to the 1/4 comes second, and minus 12 comes third, and then you're equal 0. And we're doing this to write it in standard form, or a form where we know we can factor using the trinomial guess and check, just like we did the other day. Okay, so remember I told you guys then you have two choices. Either just take that middle exponent, or think of it as taking half of the first exponent. Half of a half is 1/4, and 1/4 plus 1/4 is a half. All right, I know it's going to be plus and minus because this sign here is negative 12. Plus 3 minus 4 to give me the negative 1 in the middle. X to the 1/4 equals negative 3. X to the 1/4 equals positive 4. I've set them both equal to 0. I'll move the constants over all at one time. We talked about this in yesterday's notes, the 2.3. Right here, we talked about if this is even, like 2, 4, 6, or 8, and this is negative, there's going to be no solution, or no real solution. And the reason is if you raise both sides to the 4th power, you will get a number. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is 81. But 81 to the 1/4 power is not negative 3. So even, negative, no solution. Even, but that's positive, so we can work that out. We raise both sides to the 4th power. X equals 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 is 16 times 16, which is 256. And again, our only restriction was 0, so this answer is good, and we're ready to move on. So these first two should feel a lot like review. Number 3, this is one that's a slightly different. X times x plus 5 equals x plus 5. All right, this is an easier one. It is don't work too far ahead, please. It is pretty simple to distribute your x and then subtract this over to the other side, get it equal to 0, factor and solve. But I don't want you to do it that way, because I want you to try it this way I'm going to show you, because it's going to work out easier on the problems to come, promise you. All right, even though this guy's not in parentheses, put it in parentheses. You don't have to use substitution. You can, but you don't have to. And then treat this as a whole term that you're going to move over. So you're going to move it over to that side. So it's going to be x plus 5, close parentheses, minus parentheses x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, so all I did is I moved this guy over, but I put a minus and then big chunky parentheses. If I were to distribute that negative, it would be minus x minus 5, which is the same as subtracting x, subtracting 5. I just moved it over in one big chunk. Okay, two terms, can you see that? And I'm going to GCF. Can you see that the GCF for both of them is x plus 5? Not x plus 5 squared, I saw that mistake on the test. Not x plus 5 squared, just x plus 5. Oh, I'm going to put a 1 here just so you can see it. There is a 1 there. Parentheses. If I take out the x plus 5, what does that leave me with here? X. If I've taken out the x plus 5, what does that leave me with there? Minus 1. And you're ready to solve. So what did we do? We took the big, there were no parentheses there. We added them in. We chunked it. We moved it over. I put a minus 1 in front. Notice there were two terms. Both of them had a common factor. So I took out the greatest common factor, x plus 5, leaving me behind with x minus 1. X plus 5 times x, is that there? X plus 5 times negative 1 is that piece there. All right, x equals negative 5, positive 1. Again, you could have distributed, subtracted, factored, and got the same exact answer, but doing it this way is going to help you in the long run. So I'm hoping you stuck it with me and didn't complain and, oh, that was harder, because it's going to help you in the long run. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Number 4, the quantity of x minus 4 squared, parentheses, x plus 3, equals, parentheses, x minus 4 quantity squared. Okay. Now, this is definitely not one you would want to do the way I said you could have done this way, because you'd have to double distribute this, and then triple distribute to this, and then FOIL this or double distribute, get everything over to one side, and try to factor and solve. It's going to be a mess. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, one quick side note, a mistake that kids often make that I want to address. I don't want you doing this because it's going to mess you up, and I just want to show it because I have kids doing it every year. We'll be in second semester and I still have kids making this mistake. So just watch for now. You don't have to write this down. They'll say, oh, I can divide both sides by x minus 4 squared. This is wrong, and I'm going to show you why. There's a reason why I'm walking you all the way through this error. First off, some of you might be saying, oh, that's what I wanted to do. And they reduce that, and they say x plus 3 equals, this reduces to 1, and then they subtract the 3 over, and they get x equals negative 2. And then they get it wrong. They get partial, no, actually not even partial credit, because I don't like you doing it this way. But what happens when you do it this way is you end up losing one of your solutions. If you were to plug in negative 2 and check it, negative 2 does indeed work. It is a correct answer, but it is not the only correct answer. There's more than one answer here. And when you divide an x, you lose an answer. I'm going to repeat that. When you divide out an x, you lose an answer. Do not ever do it, ever, even when we're later on in first semester, later on in second semester, when you're in calculus. When you divide an x, you lose an answer. I'm going to ignore that phone call because I need to finish these notes. Actually, I'm going to answer, so try to do that one on your own the same way you did number 3, moving the big chunky piece over. All right, sorry about that. We are going to continue. So I'm going to treat it the same way I did here. I'm going to move it this way only because I already have this big chunky piece there. So subtracting it over, x minus 4 squared, x plus 3, take away, I'm going to put a 1 in front just so I know that there is a 1 there. Okay, same, minus, because I subtracted that over, x minus 4 squared, I just put a 1 in front. Two terms, GCF. This time the GCF is x minus 4 squared because they both happen to have a squared. That's the only reason why there's a squared there. Exaggerated parentheses, leaving me with x plus 3, take away 1, close the exaggerated parentheses, equals 0. And I forgot my equal 0 up there. All right, x minus 4 squared came out, leaving behind the x plus 3 and the minus 1. There's nothing to distribute inside, so I can drop the inner parentheses and then combine like terms. And now we're ready to solve using the zero product property. Okay, this first one, we square root both sides to get rid of the squared square root. And when you square root both sides, you do plus or minus, but plus or minus 0 is just 0, so I don't have to worry about it. Technically, I am doing it. The square root, or plus or minus the square root of 0, is just 0. Add over your 4, you get x equals positive 4 and negative 2. Now remembering when I did it the wrong way earlier, when I did it this way, did I end up with one of the correct answers? I did, which was fine and great, but I didn't end up with a positive 4. So remember what I said earlier, dividing by x, you end up losing an answer, and that would have happened here. You're thinking, oh, it's easier, yes, but you're not getting the right answer. The right answers are 4 and negative 2, not just the negative 2. Got it? All right, that's it for this lesson.